Today we're going to be reviewing the trail loop for the Apple Watch Ultra again. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new around here, my name is Ronan and I make product and tech reviews, and in today's video we really need to talk about the trail loop for the Apple Watch Ultra. Now, if you're familiar with my channel at all, you might know that I actually reviewed this band recently enough, and I think we just need to revisit a couple of the points that I made in my last video. And just for some context, I ordered the Apple Watch Ultra 2 on launch day when Apple announced it last September, and when I ordered it with the trail loop and with the Alpine loop. In my last video about the trail loop, I said that I really liked it, but that I thought that the Alpine loop was just a better looking band. Based purely on aesthetics, I think that the Alpine loop that I have here is a better looking band than the trail loop. I just think it looks nicer overall, and I really love this blue and gray version that I have here. And I just think that it gives the Apple Watch Ultra a more rugged look. But that is just my opinion, and if we're being honest, that's pretty subjective. You might be watching this video and think that the trail loop is just a much nicer looking band than the Alpine loop, and to be honest, that would be your opinion, and that would be just as valid as my opinion. So let's forget about how it looks for the moment and focus on some of the things that actually matter. The design of the trail loop is essentially the same as the sport loop that Apple make for the standard Apple Watch series, but the trail loop is just a much more premium version of that band. And if we just look at the two bands side by side right here, you can see just how similar the design of these two bands are. And if we look at the sport loop, and in particular the lugs on the sport loop here, these lugs, where it connects to the Apple Watch, are actually plastic, and the material here is kind of like a Velcro nylon. Whereas if we look at the trail loop is a much nicer version of that nylon, and on this side here, it's unbelievably soft and it feels super nice to touch, and that's actually the material that's against your skin when you wear it. So it's really, really nice. And then also the lugs on the trail loop here are also, these are the same titanium that's on the Apple Watch Ultra, so it just matches 100% and it's beautiful. And at €99, the trail loop is actually twice the price of the sport loop. And comparing these two bands side by side like this, I have to say, I do think that the trail loop is worth the extra cost. Okay, so the next thing that I need to discuss is the issue of skin irritation. I mentioned in my last video that I was really disappointed by the trail loop because I was suffering from skin irritation after a couple of days of wearing the band. And I found that after a few days, I'd have to take it off and swap it out for a different band because my wrist was getting really itchy and irritated. I also mentioned in my last video that I thought that that irritation might be lessening the more I wear the band, but at the time it was too soon to tell. Well, I've actually found that that irritation has lessened a lot, and in fact it only really happens now if I have the band too tight on my wrist when I put it on. And what's more, what I've also discovered is with my Alpine loop, if I have that too tight on my wrist, I'm actually starting to get a little bit of irritation when I wear that band now too. And the solution with both of these bands is to just loosen them a little bit, and then they're perfectly comfortable on my wrist again, and I don't have any issues wearing them. And in this instance, the trail loop is actually way better than the Alpine loop, just because it's so much easier to adjust on your wrist when you're wearing it. You can just rip off the Velcro tab and readjust it. It only takes a second, whereas with the Alpine loop, you have to undo this hook, loosen off the strap with these loops here, and then do up the hook again. And it's just a lot more clunky to adjust, and it just takes longer, which personally is something that I really just don't have the patience for. Okay, and then when we get into comfort, I've already mentioned that the material that the trail loop is made out of is beautiful, and to be honest, so is the material that the Alpine loop is made out of. But the Alpine loop does feel a lot rougher to touch than the trail loop, although again, the more I use it and the more I have it, it is getting softer. But there's absolutely no question, the trail loop is so unbelievably soft that it doesn't even compare to the Alpine loop. But in saying all of that, what I will say is when they're both on your wrist, I'm not really sure that one is necessarily more comfortable than the other. They're different, but I can't really say that one is definitively more comfortable than the other. And what I mean by that is just the Alpine loop doesn't feel rough at all when it's on your wrist, and then these loops here, they kind of double up and they act as cushioning when the band is on your wrist. So it just feels really nice. And then the trail loop on the other hand, it obviously doesn't have any cushioning, but because it's super soft and the softest part of the material is against your wrist all the time, it just feels lovely, and it also feels super, super light when it's on your wrist. So like I say, they're both just like really comfortable bands. But the main reason that I say that neither one is more comfortable than the other is because once you've put it on, after about like 30 seconds or a minute or whatever, once you kind of get on to the next part of your day, essentially, you kind of don't feel it and you kind of forget that you're wearing it. And that's why they have equal levels of comfort in my mind, because you don't even notice it when it's on your wrist. And for me, that is like the definition of comfort in a watch. So with all that being said, I feel like my initial criticisms of the Apple Trail Loop in my last video are wrong. And that's why I wanted to kind of make this update video. Having used both of these bands for a while, I have to say, like, I really, really love wearing both of them. And for me, the decision as to which one I choose to wear comes down to essentially my outfit for that day. Like if I'm wearing a lot of grays and blacks and that kind of a thing, 100% I'm gonna go with my Trail Loop. And then if I'm wearing like blues or navies or that kind of a thing, I'll probably go with the Alpine Loop. And that is essentially how I decide which one of these bands I'm gonna choose on a daily basis. So then to answer the question of whether or not I think the Trail Loop is actually worth €100, I have to say I've changed my mind, because I do think that the Trail Loop is worth €100, even though I said in my last video that I didn't. I think it's a really great band for your Apple Watch Ultra, and I think if you buy one, you're going to love it. If you're considering buying an Apple Watch Ultra and you're trying to decide whether or not you want to buy the Alpine Loop or you want to buy the Trail Loop, my advice would be to try and go into like an Apple store or somewhere that has them out where you can actually see them, see the band and see which one that you like best. And even better yet, see if you can try them on and see which one that you like best on your wrist, both in terms of how they feel and how they look. And then when you've made the decision as to which one you like best, that's the band you should go for. Because ultimately, that is the most important thing. As I said at the outset, I still prefer the look of the Alpine Loop over the Trail Loop on my Apple Watch Ultra. But if you prefer the Trail Loop to the Alpine Loop, then that's your answer. Because like one of my favorite things about the Apple Watch and the Apple Watch Ultra is there's so many different types of watch band out there, that there's so many different ways that you can style your Apple Watch to suit you. And it's really great that Apple have kind of catered for that and have made so many different bands for everyone. And there's also so many third-party bands out there as well. So you really can customize your Apple Watch to suit your needs. Okay, so that is all I have to say about the Apple Trail Loop for now. I hope you've liked this video. If you do, please give it a big thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys in my next video.